Most people live in one place their entire life. They're born in one place, they grow up there, they go to school there, they get the first job they can, they marry there, their children grow up there, they stay in one place their entire life. The way I live is completely different. I haven't lived in one place my entire life, and I don't even live in one place throughout the year. Every year I spend time living in different locations around the world and completely different kinds of places as well. And in this video I want to explain to you why this traditional way of life was not for me, and why instead I want to have multiple places in the world that I live, and why I could probably never stick to just one place. Before we get into the video, my name is Thomas. On this channel I document my life around the world. I think most people live boring and uninspiring lives. I used to live like that as well, and I don't want you to be one of them. So on this channel, my mission is to inspire you to build your dream lifestyle around the world, because I think life is too short to not live exactly the life that we want. So first, let's just go over the way my lifestyle around the world works. So I have essentially one main base, which is in Dubai in the UAE. That is where I have my business, I have my tax residency, I have sort of my main center of life in that location. I stay there probably 6 to 8 months of the year, and for the rest of the year what I want eventually to happen is to have 1 to 2 sort of secondary bases in the world, probably somewhere in Asia. Right now I am in Asia, sort of exploring what these secondary bases could be. So essentially what that will mean is that I will spend 6 to 8 months in Dubai, I will move to my second home for a couple of months and to my third home for a couple of months, and then sort of do that every single year. I don't know if I'm going to do this forever. Most likely it's going to be a variation of this forever, and we'll get into the reasons in a second. But the core of setting up a life like this is that you want to most likely have one location that is essentially your main home. And sort of high level reason for this is that most of the world is not really set up to accommodate people who live like us. Every country, every bank, every institution assumes that you have a home, like one home, like the average person does. So it makes life easier if you do actually have one address, that's your main address, one place where you have your banking. Now you can obviously have multiple bank accounts in multiple countries like I do personally. And most importantly, you're gonna have one place that is your main tax residency, because in a lot of cases, you're gonna want to have a tax residency somewhere. Not necessarily, but most likely it's going to be helpful to you. So I chose Dubai and the UAE as my main base because number one, it gives me good business infrastructure. I can set up my business there, have a reputable business setup with good infrastructure around me. It has good banking, and it's also just the kind of city where I really want to live. Every successful growth-minded person tends to be moving there. It's really great for networking. I think nowadays it's the best city in the world for online entrepreneurs, for growth-minded people specifically. And of course, it gives me a tax residency in a zero tax jurisdiction. Now, they have a 9% tax now, but the way it works is that if you make less than $816,000 in a year in revenue, so for 99.9% of people, it is still going to be a zero tax jurisdiction. If you yourself want to set up a base or a business, or you want to move to Dubai, the UAE, then I have business partners down below who can give you a free consultation where they can walk you through the process, and then just do all of this for you in as little as 2 to 4 weeks. So if you're interested, you can book that call down below. Now let's go over why I don't live in one place and why I want to have multiple places in the world, despite of all the benefits that Dubai gives me and despite how much I like being in Dubai. And the first benefit is optimal weather throughout the year. I think weather is one of the biggest determinants of our quality of life. Like, most people are going to have some weather that they prefer. Now this could be varying weather where sometimes it rains, sometimes it's sunny, etc. You're gonna have some kind of climate that is optimal for you. But most people, for probably 80% of people, this is gonna be sunny, warm weather. Most people don't want to live in super cold places where it snows. Some people do, but most people, it's gonna be a sunny place. Now, it's unlikely that the place where you live is going to have that perfect climate for the entire year round. Dubai, for me, has perfect weather for 8 months of the year, and then for 1 to 2 months of the year is kind of slightly too hot weather, but still bearable to me, and for 2 to 3 months of the year it's just way too hot. So I could live in Dubai for the entire year, but that would require me to spend some of the year in weather and in climate that is not optimal for me. But what I can instead do is spend the super hot months somewhere else where the climate is really great for in that time of the year, which allows me to enjoy great weather for me for the entire year. Second benefit is just different vibe. Now, some people will just have one vibe, like one kind of like place that they enjoy. But for me, I like different kinds of vibe. There's like two main vibes that I enjoy. I enjoy the polished, sort of luxurious, like super modern vibe of Dubai, but I also enjoy the sort of more adventurous, like more crazy, chaotic vibe of Asia. So I don't want to choose to just spend all of my time in one place, because I want to be able to enjoy both of these vibes throughout my year. When I'm in Dubai, I'm mostly in work mode. Like I'm so focused on work, because Dubai is the kind of city that really makes me motivated. It makes me really dream and work hard. But then at some point, it can get a bit too much, which starts to make me miss Bangkok or Bali or something like this, where I get a very different vibe. So then I can go there, and then after a while, I'll again get a bit tired of that vibe, and then I can go to Dubai and fully enjoy it again. Benefit number 3 is to maximize my income and minimize my expenses. What do I mean by this? Well, certain locations are going to be more optimal for making money, whereas some other locations might be more optimal for spending less money. Now, if you have an online business, of course, you could live in a cheap place and also just make as much money as possible from your online business. But I find that at a certain level, things like networking, things like just being surrounded by really successful people is going to start to become very, very important. And in the cheapest possible locations, you're not going to find those same networking opportunities. But at the same time, you don't necessarily need to be in that networking hub for the entire year to reap the benefits. For me, Dubai is this business, this networking base that allows me to maximize my income. It's where I have my business. It's what also gives me 0% tax, which allows me to keep all of my money at the end of the day. But then for some of the year, I want to enjoy adventures. I want to go on a boat trip. I want to go see islands. I want to do all this nice stuff. I want to go on nice dates. And doing that in Dubai would be a lot more expensive and just really not as good as well as doing it in Asia, for example. And also, if I spend half the year in Asia, it just allows me to save a ton on cost of living compared to spending the entire year in Dubai. So if this is important to you, then spending time in multiple locations can really again allow you to just optimize your finances really, really well. Benefit number 4 is just learning that life is different in different places. Now, when you live in one place your entire life, you sort of grow to assume that what you're used to is normal. And if someone from some other culture or country does something differently, that is not normal. Whenever I see this attitude in someone, I know that they've lived their entire life in one place. When you go to different places, you learn to understand that a lot of practical things in life are just done differently in different places. Now, I just find this really, really fascinating. And it also has a very practical benefit, because it allows you to see all these different ways of doing things. And from that, you can then look at all the benefits and all the cons of all these different ways of doing this, and then make up your own mind. Choose what is best for you. Choose what you actually think. Because if you grow in one place, you're going to grow to have the attitude of that place. You're going to grow to think in the same way as the people in that place. But when you spend time in different places, you're also going to learn different perspectives. You're going to learn different ways of looking at things, which allows you to become a free thinker, to actually understand the entire world from a bird's eye perspective, and then make up your own mind. This is so, so important. And this is why a lot of the successful people that I know, they have lived in different places, and I can tell from them that they can think more freely because they just have a lot more perspective. For example, if you live in the West, you're gonna be fed all these agendas about LGBTQ, all this stuff, and if you just live in that one culture, you're just gonna assume that, oh, this is just normal, this is just how it is. But when you go to different countries that don't perhaps believe in these things, that don't think in these kinds of ways, you learn to think like, it's not that this is inherently how it is, it's just that in this one location, they think it this kind of way. So you can see both perspectives and hear both sides and then make up your own mind. But if you just stick to one place, one culture, one way of thinking, you're not going to have that perspective, and you're just going to be siloed in this one way of looking at the world. So these are the main benefits, but of course there's going to be a couple of cons as well. So let's quickly go over those. The first is going to be the logistics. Now, obviously, if you're just moving around the world every single year, it can be logistically difficult because you're having to pack your stuff, unpack your stuff. Maybe there's something big that you own, like I own a monitor. Just kind of difficult to take that to different places, etc. So I wouldn't recommend necessarily having like 6 spaces or being like a traditional digital nomad where you're just going from one place to another every month for too long, because logistically that just becomes difficult. Whenever you go to a new place, it takes a bit of time for you to get settled there, to find your gym, to like get your stuff and everything. But if it's like 2 to 3 bases, then I don't think the hassle is that big when you're only moving like 3 times in a year. But there is that to consider nevertheless. Con number 2 is that this lifestyle does make certain things more expensive, For example, in almost any country, if you're renting for the entire year, your rent is gonna be cheaper than if you rent for, let's say, only 6 months. So you're having to pay higher rates for rent because you're renting for shorter term. Or if you choose to rent the entire year in all your bases, then obviously you're having to pay for multiple apartments at the same time. And there's things like you're not gonna be able to get a long-term gym membership. Like again, most of the world is not designed for people like us. It is designed for people who have just one home and they live in a place full time. So a lot of like gym memberships, mobile contracts, things like this, they can be more pricey and more inconvenient if you're doing it on a short-term basis. But I haven't found it to be a big deal or anything like that, but there will be some things like that will be a bit more pricey or more inconvenient. Now, of course, con number 3 is that it's harder to build a family. If you have kids, etc., you're probably going to want to be in one place so you can put them to school in one place and things like this. Now, this is not something that's relevant for me yet and not for a very long time, but for someone who is at that age, who is at that stage of life, then obviously that is something to consider. And in general, for dating as well, it is more difficult. Like if I wanted to date someone long term, essentially I would need to find someone who's willing to just move around with me. For me, that's not necessarily a problem, but for them and for me, it would just require more planning and it requires the right kind of person and things like this. So it's just a bit more difficult as well. In general, living like this is by definition not normal. But the big message is that just because the average person doesn't do this is not a reason to not do it. Just ask yourself this. Do you want the life of the average person? If you look at the life of the normal person doing the normal things, is that the kind of life that you want? Are the outcomes that they've had the outcomes that you want for yourself? If they're not, then there's no reason for you to follow the life of that person, because if you do exactly what the average person does, you're gonna get the same life as the average person has. If you're interested to know how I built this lifestyle for myself, how I actually make money to be able to live like this, then you can watch this video right here where I go over my 7 income sources that allow me to make $30,000 a month online while being completely free and living this lifestyle. So go watch that video next, and I'll see you in the next one.